guys, I'm back today with chapter 22. I hope you've enjoyed the last few chapters. I know we've talked about the fact that there were a few bits in there that were quite hard hitting, so I hope you've chatted to anyone if you felt the need to. Alright, and if you haven't, it's still fine to give us an email. Alright? Okay, let's see what happens in chapter 22. On Monday, Dad is up and down from the breakfast table like his bum's doing a Mexican wave. He says he won't be at the exhibition long. He makes tea, he sits down, and then he gets up and walks over to the window. He stares at the grey clouds and says it's freezing out there. He comes back and sits down. We're to go to Cat straight after school, and then he'll be back and pick us up from Crops and Bobbers. Dad sips his tea and adds more milk. He says everything will change when he gets back. It'll be the beginning of a whole new chapter. I bring a spoonful of chocolate cereal to my lips. I'm still feeling uneasy about what I saw in the hallway. Last night I tried to figure it all out, but it hurt my head so much that I fell into an uneasy, dreamless sleep until Billy woke me at 5:43. Only this time he didn't come into my bed. I heard him get up and sit in Mum's armchair, and I heard him mumbling something. But then I fell back asleep, so I have no idea what it was. This morning, Billy doesn't speak to either Dad or me at all. He's got tiny little purple half moons under his eyes, and when Dad asks if he's tired, Billy just shrugs and says he slept all the way through the night. On the way to school, I challenge Billy. "What's wrong?" I ask. "Is it what Pearl said? You know she's not right. It was a stupid thing to say." "Nothing's wrong," Billy replies, and for the first time ever on our walk to school, he doesn't bend down and poke through the mud in someone's garden. He doesn't tell me that he's seen a ladybird or a millipede or a spider with 6 legs, because he accidentally stood on 2 of them. When we reach the playground, Billy says goodbye. I don't answer because the bell rings just then and I have to join my line. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Billy and his class trot away to their classroom like tiny ducklings wearing backpacks. He turns back and waves at me, so I wave in return. Then Billy's gone. At lunchtime, it's obvious Dad has a lot on his mind this morning because he's forgotten to put fish paste in my sandwiches. All I've got is plain white bread. "Nice simple sandwiches you've got there," scoffs Neva from the table next door. I lean over and say I'm sorry about what I said about butterflies. Neva says she knew I would be. "How?" "Because you're still wearing the bracelet." She points at my wrist. "If you really thought it was stupid, then you'd have taken it off, but you haven't. I was just waiting until you said sorry, and now you have." Knuckles butts in and says the bracelet worked for him. He won the garden competition and got to plant an apple tree for his dad. I shrug and say it still hasn't done anything for me, and maybe nothing is ever going to happen. Neva leans across and passes me a cheesy biscuit and says she's sure it will because she can feel it in her bones. I want to say that I hope she can't feel anything in her bones because I've read about bones in my medical manual, and if they start hurting, it's not a great sign. But now we're back to being friends, I just take the biscuit instead. The one person I'm definitely not friends with, though, walks past and shoots me a smug smile. I figure out why. When I ask Neva what Mimi's problem is, Neva shakes her head. "Perfection's her problem. You could knock me down with an ostrich feather. How is perfect a problem?" "Okay, you're looking at me as if I'm stupid," says Neva. "But listen, Mimi might live in a perfect house with perfect parents, and her mum might look like a model, but they expect her to be perfect at everything. Didn't you see how annoyed she was at not doing well in her science test? She was fuming at you for getting everything right. I can't help being good at science," I bluster. "And you won the garden competition. But I can't help being good at..." I scratch my head. Neva explains that Mimi's probably a bit envious because she was used to getting the gold stars for everything until I came along. "Did you know we used to be best mates and I'd go around to her house all the time?" I shake my head. Neva continues, "But her mum didn't like us messing up their perfect house, and her mum made her do all these after-school clubs. We kind of drifted apart after that. I don't think she's got any real friends anymore." "She could have us," says Knuckles, chewing the last of his tuna sandwich. He shrugs. I bite my lip. Mimi hasn't been all that nice to me since I started at Bleeding Heart. Knuckles, seeing my face, says there's no point in being annoyed with Mimi anymore because it won't get us anywhere, and let's face it, none of us are perfect anyway. So the girl who thinks she has to be perfect is about to get 3 imperfect friends, whether she likes it or not. Whether she likes it or not, Knuckles suggests. After a moment's thought, I tell Neva she should make Mimi one of her special bracelets, and Neva smiles and says she might just do that, because Mimi probably needs something good to happen to her too. "Maybe we can be the good thing," Neva muses. "Like the garden was my amazing thing," says Knuckles, opening his lunchbox. He takes out a carton of apple juice and pierces it with a straw. Neva asks him why he thinks the garden made the bracelet snap, because he never really said. Well, you know it's for my dad. Knuckles takes a slurp of apple juice and sets down the carton on the table. A tiny drip dangles on the end of the straw. I miss him so much, and I wanted to do something that would make me feel a bit closer to him despite everything that's happened to us. Dad loved gardening, and once he told me apples were a symbol of love and happiness, and I wanted to try to remember Dad with love and happiness, even though it was hard, so I thought of planting an apple tree. Seeing the dumper truck on the table made me think about how Dad and me used to play together. Knuckles pauses. And then all of that was gone. Was it a memorial garden? I suddenly wish I'd thought of that for my mum. It was better than planting seeds. I could have designed the goodbye garden. Why, oh why didn't I put that on the list? It could have been number 10, the one I didn't have an idea for. But I can't hijack the idea now, not since Knuckles has taken it for his dad. Knuckles stares at me. What are you on about? My dad isn't dead. He's in prison. I nearly choke on Neva's cheesy biscuit. I spend all afternoon thinking about Knuckles' dad and how hard it must be, and I realise that even though his dad isn't dead like my mum, it's sort of the same thing. It explains why he didn't like talking about his dad in the beginning and why the garden was so important to him. I'm glad the bracelet broke for him. I don't care why his dad's in prison, and I'm glad the apple tree will grow in his garden, blossom and bear pretty apples for all to see. I stare down at my bracelet. But why does it feel like nothing good's ever going to happen to me? An hour later, something so incredibly bad happens to me that it makes me wish I'd never even believed anything good might happen. And it's all because I'm late to the school gate. I'm talking to Neva and Knuckles when I get there, 5 minutes late. After the bell rang, we got talking about the garden again, and Knuckles was saying that he'd love to do an interview with the Eden Echo if they asked. Knuckles says he used to feel bad talking about his dad because when he said his dad was in prison, it made others treat him differently. Either they stopped being friends with him or they felt sorry for him. So he kept quiet. But the garden made him feel better. It was as if his dad wasn't gone, as if he was right there in the garden and everyone thought the garden was amazing. It made Knuckles feel special and feel that his dad was special too. I didn't notice how slow we were walking, and at first I don't notice that Billy's not there at the gate waiting for me. But when it becomes obvious that his whole class has gone home, I begin to panic. I tell Neva and Knuckles to wait at the gate for Billy while I run around the school, checking the classrooms and the toilets, checking the muddy patches. I can see the teachers sitting in the school assembly hall, and there's a man on the stage giving a talk. They can't see me press my face against the glass. They can't see I'm in a flap about Billy. Sweat blooms on my shirt, leaving grey flowers. "Billy hasn't come to the gate yet," shouts Neva as I run back towards her. "But he can't have gone that far. I'll just text Mum and tell her I'm helping you look and I'll be home soon." She starts punching the words into her mobile phone. "I'll help too," says Knuckles. "Billy'll turn up. He must be round here somewhere." No matter what they both say, there's a horrible feeling in my stomach that won't go away. Billy said goodbye this morning and I didn't say a proper goodbye back. Did it mean something? At the time, I didn't think. Dazed, I say, well, maybe he's gone home already. Maybe I just missed him and he thought he could walk by himself. That's where we go first. I fling open the flat door and Neva and Knuckles follow me into the hallway. I shout Billy's name, but he's obviously not here because I know he would come running. He always comes to me. In our bedroom, there are paper cranes all over the floor like the crumbs leading to the witch's house in Hansel and Gretel. Carefully, I pick them up and put them in a large envelope along with the ones I've made. I know I wasn't able to make 1,000 in the end, nowhere near. But for some reason I want all the paper cranes with me because I'm hoping that their magic will bring me my biggest wish of all, finding Billy. Billy has to come back, I tell myself. Neva stops and looks around and says our living room's lovely and the lilies are pretty. I look at our living room again. Maybe it's not so bad after all, I think, before making my way down the hall and opening the front door. This time, Snoop, including 2 new honorary members, is on the mission of a lifetime, to find Billy Rumsey. This mission cannot fail. My first thought is he'll have gone back down to our old house at Honeydown Hills. "Is that where you used to live?" asks Neva. I nod and say we moved recently and perhaps Billy was taking Brian back to look at the old house. "Is Brian his friend? Maybe we could ring him in first and ask," replies Neva. "Brian," I say, slamming the flat's front door behind us and running down the steps, "prefers snail mail." Before we all go to the bus stop, I want to try to speak to Kat. The last time we were talking, she seemed to have such sensible ideas about everything and made me feel calm inside, like she was throwing a tea towel over my flames. Plus, she seems to have the right answers like a mum would. Maybe she's seen Billy and I'm worrying about nothing, but the Crops and Bobbers door's locked and there's a tiny notice in the window saying back in 5 minutes. The thing is, I haven't got 5 minutes. Eventually the bus arrives and we all jump on board and hurry towards the back. I set down the envelope of cranes and tell Neva and Knuckles how Billy was sad about us leaving our old home and how Dad's girlfriend didn't come with us. I tell them how things have been all muddled up recently. I think Billy wanted it to be the same as it was before. I look at Neva. I mean, he wanted us to stay the same, but sometimes things change even when you don't want them to. Even if you want to take a moment and stick it in a bottle and put the lid on it to save it. You can't, whispers Neva. But it doesn't stop Billy wanting us to go backwards, I reply, staring out the window. He's only 7 and he doesn't understand. If the bus went backwards, though, says Knuckles, thinking, then we'd never get anywhere other than where we started. I think that journey sounds pants. Back at the beginning every time. I'd rather go someplace new. What if you had a time machine? Would you go back then? I blink. I would, says Neva. I'd want to change history so my sister lived. She pauses. I never told you what happened, did I? The words explode around me like bubbles in a fizzy drink. I'm a twin. It was me and my sister. Mum picked names for us. I was Neva and my sister was Mariposa. It's Spanish for butterfly. My mum has Spanish heritage, only I was okay when I was born, but Mariposa wasn't. She was so tiny and had a problem with her heart, which meant that she didn't survive more than a few days. Mum never talked about it again. Then one day, years later, a butterfly landed on me, like I told you. It was Mariposa. I looked it up and started drawing butterflies everywhere, but I kept the reason why secret from Mum because I didn't want to upset her. Neva shrugs. I made the bracelets too because I wanted good things to happen, because the worst thing that could ever happen already had. But I don't think I can believe in butterflies. You don't have to believe in butterflies, says Neva. That's just what I believe in. It works for me. Maybe there's something else for you. I'm sorry your sister died. My mum died too. It's the first time I've told any of my new friends about my mum. The first time I've ever felt brave enough to do it. Next, the craziest thing happens that makes me wonder if Neva really does have a point about butterflies being souls. A red admiral butterfly flutters onto the bus window and stays there. Look, my sister's just come to visit to say things will be okay. Neva's jumping up and down in excitement on her seat. It's Mariposa! I nod and inside my head I'm saying, do you think your sister could go back and tell my mum to get in contact? And that's the end of chapter 22. Chapter 23 next. Thanks guys, see you later.